Today's history lesson will be about Doris Miller by Professor Third Class Guerrero. I would like to start with a quote that I think nicely encompasses what we're going to be learning about today. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." Mr. Rogers. Doris Miller was born on October 12, 1919 in Waco, Texas. He was the third child out of 4 from his parents, Connery and Henrietta Miller. He was a true Renaissance man. He would help around the house, worked at the family farm, and even played football at school. Unfortunately, in 1937, at the age of 17, he dropped out of school. But then he applied to the Civilian Conservation Corps. But then he got rejected. At the age of 20, on September 16, 1939, Doris Miller joined the most elite and deadly fighting force in the world, the United States Navy. At this time, Miller was stationed and trained in Norfolk, Virginia, and was promoted to Mess Attendant, 3rd Class. During this time, the rates for black people in the military were very limited. In 1940, he was assigned to the battleship West Virginia. It was here where he began competing in boxing and even became the ship's heavyweight boxing champion. On December 7, 1941, Miller was collecting his shipmates' laundry when the first of 9 torpedoes hit the West Virginia. Amidst the terror that was going on in the ship, Miller reported to Lieutenant Commander Johnson and made himself available for whatever task. Johnson directed Miller to help him carry the commanding officer of the ship to safety, for the commanding officer had been greatly wounded. Later, Miller helped a pair of officers to load number 1 and 2 .50 caliber anti-aircraft machine guns from the conning tower. Miller fired the gun until there was no ammunition left. He then goes to rescue his semi-conscious commanding officer from the thick, oily smoke of the ship. Unfortunately, his CO died soon afterward. When the attack of the ship subdued, Miller helped move many injured sailors despite the obstacle course that was the destroyed ship. At this point, the ship was irreparably damaged. This caused the remaining crew members to abandon the ship. The West Virginia sank to the bottom of the harbor. In January 1942, the Navy put out a list of commendations for those that displayed courageous acts the dreadful day of December 7, 1941. Among these names on the list, there was a single commendation for an unmanned Negro. The NAACP asked President Roosevelt to award the unnamed Negro the Distinguished Service Cross. The Navy Board of Awards also received the same recommendation. On March 12, 1942, Doris Miller was finally identified. Soon after, a congressman and a senator both mentioned for the sailor to be awarded the Medal of Honor. Miller was recognized as one of the first U.S. heroes on World War II. He was given a commendation signed by the Secretary of the Navy at the time, Frank Knox. Many organizations made to support Black Americans started to launch various campaigns to recognize Doris Miller, and rightfully so. He was a true American hero. On May 11, 1942, the President approved the Navy Cross for Miller, and on the 27th, Admiral Nimitz awarded the Navy Cross to Miller personally. Nimitz said in his commendation, "This marks the first time in this conflict that such high tribute has been made in the Pacific Fleet to a member of his race, and I'm sure that the future will see others similarly honored for brave acts." This is very important because many people at this time were very racist towards Black Americans. Miller continued his Navy career and he was promoted to Cook 3rd Class upon his arrival on the Liscome Bay. Unfortunately, in 1943, the ship was hit by an incredibly destructive torpedo and it caused the ship to sink in 23 minutes. Miller was not a part of the 272 survivors. Doris Miller died a true American hero, selflessly helping fight for a country that did not fight for him. Doris Miller helped fight the uphill battle of equality for Black people in America. He helped fight against racist segregation laws in the states and in the military. Miller's story was a story of bravery and selflessness, and it helps us narrate what happened the dreadful day of the attack of Pearl Harbor. Thank you, Doris Miller. Doris Miller, if you're watching me from heaven, I apologize for this very low budget video that I am doing to honor you. This is just what happens when a Tier 3 major tries to get techie. I promise you deserve a lot better than this.